Within the communities, it is my opinion that many people are stalked. Now, the stalking happens on multiple levels. One form of the stalker is, in fact, a member of the HOA. They're driving up and down there, and there's that weed, and there's that, there's that. The other stalker, the management company. Remember, they're not making any money unless they can get some fines out there. They're driving the community. The form of that stalking can come out in letters. Let's keep those letters going, keep them going. But there's another stalker in the neighborhood that you don't know about. And it could be you. And here's how it happens. You get a letter in the mail, and it talks about the pot on your front porch. And you stand on your front porch and you say, well, this pot's been here for years. What in the world's going on here? I'll bet it's them. I'll bet they did it. And now the paranoia starts. And so what you do is you write a letter to your HOA and you complain about the plant on the side of their house. And now they get a letter. And they go outside and they'll say, what the heck? I'll bet it's them. And it goes on and on throughout the neighborhood. And the management companies and the collection companies are laughing because now they don't have to go out and inspect you. You simply do it for them. And they send letters based on what you sent. What is it about us human beings that can't leave each other alone? I've yet to figure this out. Although, as it's one of my primary interests in research, is why is it that we have to pick on each other? Why can't we let each other be? History shows this, that this is not new to us. That country after country will invade another country, even though those countries are doing fine, suddenly they want more, and more, and more, and greed. And yet we moved into this neighborhood to be at peace. Why can't we be at peace? I'd like to explain to you a little bit about what's happening from a neurological point of view with respect to the board members, the people in the community. You see, this is pretty darn exciting, being on that board and being able to talk about you and fine you and do all these things and come after you. But it's not as simple as saying that I enjoy this. The question is why, and I'm going to put together a little graph here for you. This represents the dopamine in our brain. Dopamine is that part of our neurotransmitter. It's our neurotransmitter, one of our neurotransmitters, that makes us feel pleasure. Those people who go out drinking kick up their dopamine. You're at a party, your dopamine's kicked up. All right. You're on the board. It's a board meeting night. It's going to be a great night. In fact, just the mere idea that it's going to be a board meeting, your dopamine is now kicked up. And your neurotransmitters in your brain are now feeling good. It's dopamine. And I'm making comments, and I'm arguing, and I'm yelling, and I'm preparing letters, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And at the end of the meeting, crash. Just like a cocaine user, just like an alcohol user. Crash. Now, why do we do it again? Why does anybody who's habituated to a substance do it again? It's not the substance. It's the dopamine. It's the memory of what it did. So let's go back to our board. I want to keep on feeling good. I'm going to go ahead and do something to kick this up. Hey, let's drive around the neighborhood. Oh, look over there. There, do you see that weed? Oh, look at that over there. There's a trash can. Oh, did you see that little girl on the front lawn? And now the dopamine is up again. And so if I draw another graph of this, and I show you what it looks like now over time, days, weeks, months, and years, individuals doing this look like this. And the more that they can stay high, the better they are. And it's no different than the individual habituated to alcohol, cocaine, heroin, amphetamines, cigarettes, shopping. I need to stay feeling good. And the feel good in this case is the harm that I place on others. And if that seems counterintuitive to you, I'll ask you a question. How is it possible that there are people out there who will, as their profession, torture other people, inflict pain and harm? How is it that they can do that? Place people to environments where they're tortured daily, hourly, by the minute. And the answer is because they get pleasure from it. It's a dopamine. It's not as simple to say to them, stop, because if they do, they have to go for their withdrawal, and they don't like it. And nor does the individual on cocaine like it. And we have no recovery or detoxification, psychological detoxification environment for these people to go to. And I have suggested in my writing that this is a two-tailed psychiatric disorder. At one tail, we have the community members who are now experiencing a wide range of problems related to HOA syndrome, depression, sadness, fear, irritable bowel syndrome, problem sleeping, so on and so forth. And at the other end, people who are habituated to the excitement of doing this to their neighbors. So far in our lectures, I've talked to you primarily about the problems. I'm now going to try and present to you a series of solutions. Solution number one, I told you, I'm going to say it again. Don't buy a home in a homeowners association. The problem can't occur if you're not inside. Don't do it. I mean, I'm in one, and I would not do it again. Don't own a home in a homeowners association. However, if you feel so compelled to do so, before you sign that document, in spite of the fact that it may feel like some form of torture, read every page of your CC&Rs. And after you've read them, make an appointment to sit with the management company and have them explain everything that you don't understand. And by the way, you won't understand much. It's been written that way. Next. If an event occurs, a letter, a complaint, something that disturbs you, never call the management company. Send them a certified letter. Be sure that it's documented, the date and the time that you sent the letter. Yes, it's going to cost you about $6 per letter. It's going to take a few minutes of your time, and it may seem like it's simple. But my experience is this. Anything that you say verbally is denied by those who heard the verbal comment as I don't remember. And I can assure you, that a verbal comment will not hold up in court. Next. If in fact you are fined, don't let the fines build. In my opinion, the way that I handle it is, if I receive a letter and the fine is for $100, I pay that $100, paid under protest. As soon as the check is cashed, I send a letter saying, I paid this under protest, I want my money back. And if I don't get my money back in 15 consecutive calendar days, I'm going to sue you. And I do. And the thing that comes from that is, I don't get any more of those letters because they haven't got the time to see me in court. Now, will that change? I don't know. I think with the release of this video, I would imagine I will be attacked from all ends. I expect it. I accept it. But at some point along the way, this information is going to disseminate. I will tell you the ultimate solution to this is as follows. 1, get the banks to stop loaning on properties in HOAs where the HOAs have a right to lien the property, especially with super liens. Get the HOA to waive it. If they won't waive it, don't loan on the property. Next. Request that legislation be passed giving homeowners equal access to legal services at the cost of the HOA. And I can assure you that this statement, for anybody that's heard this at the management companies or the collection companies, caused the eyes to go both wide and made them laugh. Here's how it would work. The HOA sues you, comes after you. The person who paid for that letter is you, your dues and fees. The HOA decides to sue you. Who paid for the lawsuit against you? You. You paid for your own lawsuit. You want to defend yourself. You have to pay for it, and that's what needs to change. If you have an issue with your HOA, it is my belief that you should be able to turn to your own organization to get legal support to fight against the very organization that you paid for to sue yourself. And with that, and my guess is, most of this will come to an end. And why won't they do it? Well, we can't have people defending themselves here. I mean, we can't have people having the right to defend themselves. What'll we do? This will be a major, major shift getting this done. But I'll say this to those who are in government positions, and if you're a member of the law enforcement. If you do this, you will stop the violence. If you do this, you will stop the harassment. If you do this, you will stop the crime. Because there'll be no reason for it to happen. It will simply go away. I've explained to you that there are what are called CC&Rs. And these CC&Rs gives you rules, rights, and regulations. Here's something it's doubtful that you know. HOA board members individually and collectively may not be sued for crimes of anything or any type. They are immune from prosecution. Why was this done? Well, it was done because the individual legislators and lawmakers decided if HOA board members could be held responsible for their actions, who would want to be on a board? Well, let's make sure that they can't be prosecuted. And lo and behold, they get a free ride. Now, you've decided you want to sue your HOA. You don't have permission. You don't have the right, because in your document, you agreed to be heard before an ombudsman. But your HOA wants to sue you. They go right to lawsuit. Got to wonder who made that one up, huh? You cannot sue your HOA until you're given permission to do so through the Ombudsman's office. The HOA may sue you anytime they want. Someone has asked me about small claims and what your rights are and what your rights aren't. And I have talked about this earlier, but I will say it again in brief. I've now decided to take my legal case to small claims. I file the necessary letter of what's known as a demand. This is a simple letter, by the way. One sentence. I demand the return of my $100. Certified. 15 days, I didn't get a letter back, or I didn't get the money back, I now sue them. I walk into the courtroom and I state my case. It is likely that the judge will say, I cannot hear this case. This case belongs before the ombudsman. All right? Now go before the ombudsman. But look at what you've done. You have gotten yourself into a courtroom. You've taken the time away from the HOA, the management company, the collection company, to come in and defend a $100 matter, which could cost, and I have been there and I've seen it, $5,000 to $10,000 for them to defend. Now, if you're a prudent business person and you're on the other side, I'm going to say, you know what? Let's not go after this guy. He's a pain in the ass. Let's go after her. She's an old lady. She won't do anything. This guy's about to die. Let's go after him. But not this guy. He's too much of a hassle. Do I expect ultimately to be attacked from all ends? You bet. Because this voice needs to be stopped. But this voice that you're hearing has prepaid for this site to be up for 6 years, undisturbed, and only added on to. So they may do as they wish to me now. I'm okay with that. And I expect it. I simply expect to get better at it. But for you, take action, go to small claims, let the court decide, and note, if they don't show up, and for $100 they may not show up, you get the judgment, you set it up for collection. You just don't, go by and say, give me $100. You actually set it up for collection. And you charge the fees for that collection. And the most disturbing thing of all, once you have got that case won, that $100, you now may elect to file a lien against the common area in the HOA. Not the happiest day for the community. I began my work on this subject in the field of psychology. I am, as I've indicated, a professor of psychology here in the College of Southern Nevada. I was stunned by what I was seeing, but was overwhelmed with what I was seeing. I wasn't sure what was going on. This entire matter, in my opinion, is entirely psychologically based. All of it, without exception, is psychologically based. What's causing the people to do what they're doing? What's driving them to do what they're doing? How are they going about it? how did they make the decisions, is entirely psychologically based. And therefore, in my opinion, entire communities need to be treated. Entire communities need to be detoxed in the same way that we might talk to people with post-traumatic stress disorder. In my opinion, we could easily assign 1 or 2 or 3 mental health care workers to each community for a couple of years to try and neutralize the damage that's been done. Do I think it's going to happen? No. No, that would be the humane thing to do. Even though the HOAs and the community are responsible for the health, safety, and welfare of their citizens, they are not going to act on it because it's not in their best interest. This is a psychological problem. It can be dealt with psychologically. And along the way, the psychological problem is manifesting itself into physiological problems, physical illnesses. Some of those illnesses we're unable to stabilize them, and they are leading to premature death. And I believe that I can prove that using similar studies. The community of people, the attorneys, the political community will eventually say to me, show us the science. And I'll show you the science. And I'll show you the good science. Not the made it up, not the, some magazine, I'm going to show you good science about why all this is true. And now I'm going to show you my skepticism. You see, I think that even if I show you the science, even if I prove it to you, you're not going to like it, and I think it's going to be tough to do anything about it. And history tells us that that is the case too. If I start off with the following question, and I have asked this question of someone, if I could prove to you that you're doing harm, would you stop doing what you're doing? And the answer is no. And that's consistent across the board. I won't stop it. And so even if I show you the science, and even if I can prove it, what are you going to do with it? I'm skeptical that you will do anything at all. I've talked earlier about information for the attorney. I must admit that my great hope here is that attorneys will jump on board and begin to take on these cases. There are major law firms all across the country who have united and are working for HOAs, collection companies, management companies. The uniting of attorneys that are against them aren't there. Why? There's no money. For the attorney, I will say it again. I believe you're making a mistake by not viewing what's happening here as a tort. The damage to the homeowner. There are damages. Psychological, physiological, punitive. I now bring into that fraud, equity theft. These homeowners are being robbed of their equity as a result of fines and fees being charged to them that aren't warranted. And if they try to stop them, they simply bring on more fees. This, in my opinion, is equity theft. I also think it's racketeering. I think these things can be proven. I've admitted I'm not an attorney. I also believe the following. CC&Rs are contracts. My understanding of a contract is that two people, our people, must enter into it and agree. I agree to sign the CC&Rs. You agree that that's what I'm going to do. You agree to abide by them, but they don't. Has the contract not been broken? And as a result of it being broken, I want to end my contract with the CC&R, but remain in my home. I'm asking you to give it some thought. I don't know the answer to it. I'm not that trained. I'm asking you to give it some thought. Here's a myth that people have, and that myth is that homes in HOAs are more valuable than the homes are not. This concept has been completely and entirely made up, and it is easy to prove that it's not true, and I'm going to show you how you can prove it. Go down to the county assessor's office and ask them if homes in HOAs are assessed with greater value than homes that are not, and they will tell you no. Call a property appraiser and ask them if they will value a home in an HOA as more than a home that's not, simply because it's in an HOA. Not because of the square footage, not because of certain amenities, but simply because it's in an HOA. And the answer is no. Now, because of what has happened over the last 5 to 7 years, the more hostility that's occurred, the people that are hearing more and more, it's now more difficult to sell out of an HOA. Just last week, I went by a sign, and the sign read, I'd never seen anything like it before, low HOA dues. What might that suggest? It tells me it's an issue. It tells me it's an issue. These processes will take time to unravel. But the truth is, homes in HOAs are not worth more than other homes, and more people are going to their real estate agent and saying, I want to buy a home, but don't show me anything in an HOA. What's that doing? The irony? It's raising the values of homes that are not in HOAs because of the demand. Sounds like payback time. A potential misunderstanding about HOAs is that they have to be in a gated versus an ungated community. This is not true. The reality is that HOAs are defined by the property they're on, and they may or may not be gated. But I will tell you, in my opinion, that before all this began happening, I would say 20 years ago, living in a gated community had some kind of prestige psychological value to it. I live in a gated community. It also came with the potential for less burglaries and robberies. At least that's what one thought. There doesn't seem to be any information to prove that, but that's what they think. I don't know burglars, but I can't imagine one saying, oh gosh, there's a gate, well, I won't go there. But I'll tell you this that's happened. The gated communities have now been able to produce more fines and more problems because you're locked in. And once you're locked in, you are now going to start living by provisions that didn't exist before. So once you buy into an HOA, 2 years later, a provision then is made up, which then makes it more difficult for you to live in that gated community. and now you're stuck. I understand the desire to live behind the Golden Gate. But were it up to me, they would all be removed. They serve no purpose. They create no greater identity. And to my knowledge, no more security. We're back from the break, and during the break I got a lot of questions from you, and I'm going to do my best to answer every question as well as I can, keeping in mind that we have a limited amount of time, and I will do my best to be succinct. Before I go forward on this, though, I want to take a moment to just show you 2 books. And one of those books is called HOA Murders, and another book is called Neighbors at War. And I'm going to go ahead and leave them up here during the lecture. I did not write these books. These books are written by other people, and they have content in them relative to homeowners associations. I am not endorsing that you go out and buy the books, not telling you that you should buy the books, but what may be most important at this moment in time is that this has gotten to the point where people are writing books about the subject. Not just articles, not just newspapers, not just magazines, not just television, not just these recordings. People are now writing books and making them available to the public. So, please take a moment and maybe come up after the lecture and look at the books and see what you think. All right, this is going to be questions and answers, so I'd like to begin with the first question. How is it possible that it actually got to the way it has gotten to, and how did it get this big, and why does it stay this way? And to do this for you, I'm actually going to try and use the board to give you a picture of how this has worked. Let us assume for a moment that here we have the parameters of a county. For the purpose of this presentation, we're going to use this as Clark County. I happen to be in Clark County, Nevada. This is true, though, all over the United States. Now, the way cities grow is they go through a process of planning. And so we have the center of the city, and the city grows out, and it grows out, and it grows out, and sometimes there are little pockets over here. But for the most part, everything is planned. Now, the homeowners associations at the beginning weren't planned. It was something that simply happened. It was an idea. Let's have a group and let's call it a homeowners association. And so it became that. But then the cities got involved, and this is a very interesting story as to why. You see, the city decides where the shopping center is going to go, and these are going to be the schools, and this will be industrial, and so on. But this pocket here, and this pocket here, and this pocket here, and here, and here, and so on, will be residential. Now, these residential pockets used to be builders going in and building a home, 1 home at a time, 2 homes at a time, 5 homes at a time. But now they build hundreds at a time, and the city designates those areas as an area that's going to be a homeowners association. Why? Now it's quite provocative. You see, where there is a home or a subdivision, an old one, the city is required to maintain the streets and the lights and all of the things that revolve around that. It's the same as the rest of the city, the freeways. All of that is maintained by the city. But these homeowners associations, when they're gated, especially, must maintain themselves. This then is an enormous windfall to the city. Why? Well, here, your tax dollars that you paid, they're paying for those streets, they're paying for the maintenance, they're paying for the lights. But here, the tax money that you pay, your taxes on your home, they're not paying for your streets. You're paying for them again. So, once you've gone into an HOA, you're going to pay property tax the same as this person's paying property tax, but now your money for your HOA dues is now going to go to the maintenance of the streets. It is an enormous windfall for the city to designate areas as homeowners associations. It means that they don't need to use tax money to maintain your property. Therefore, most of the areas are designated as homeowners associations. And now I pass an opinion to you. Please excuse my bluntness here. I believe that the cities have become habituated to the money, that they've gotten so used to saving the money that they now need it desperately. And we know at the time of this recording, it's February in 2013, cities all over the country are in trouble, as is the economy. What's one of the solutions? Have more city employees. How are you going to pay for those city employees? Taxes. There's another way to pay for them. Don't have to expend money on the citizens. You are a citizen, and we don't have to pay anything to maintain you. This system now is something that grows in size, and it is very difficult, except to go into an old designated area and build a house or two. Most areas are designated as homeowners association, which saves the city an enormous amount of money, producing a double taxation system. The next question I received was regarding issues of slander, libel, and defamation. Now, to define these for you in general, it's that when we say something about somebody in an attempt to insult them or put them down, you're stupid, you're an idiot, your mother's a whore. Any number of things that might be said regarding you. Now, you are perfectly within your rights to pass an opinion. It is my opinion that you're stupid. But to make a claim that something is true, well, now we have the potential for slander, libel, and defamation. One of the things that homeowners associations have now evolved to as a community is that when things happen within the community, the board has learned to undermine the credibility of those in the neighborhood who are against what's going on. We're against the fines. We're against being harassed. We're against you stalking us. We're against being what you're doing to us. Then the HOA comes together, the board, and they start to send word out in the community. A particular person is costing the community money because they're complaining. And you're going to pay for that homeowner because they're complaining. Now the slander, the libel, and the defamation begins with the source of information that in reality was confidential. Now, I can tell you at the time of this recording that I have several test cases where I am suing members of the community for slander and libel and defamation. I don't know what the outcome of those cases is going to be. But the goal is, again, to make this more of a public awareness. The goal is to stop the harassment. And sitting back and doing nothing, in my opinion, perpetuates the problem. Stated in another way, we are here today. We have caused this problem by just sitting back and accepting it with an occasional disgruntled complaint. And then you live with it. My position now is, let's not live with it. Let's do something about it. Stop the slander, stop the libel, stop the defamation, and if something's said about you that's not true, do something about it. What do you do? Well, by procedure, I'm not a lawyer, but the first thing you do is you send them a letter saying, you have slandered, libeled, and defamed me. I'm going to give you 15 days to retract what you've said. If you've sent it by email, send out an email. If you've sent letters to the community, send letters apologizing. After that 15 days, you can now send a letter letting them know that you're going to be taking them to court. And after you send them that letter, you may file a lawsuit. But first, give them an opportunity to apologize. My personal experience is that as a result of ego and hubris, people simply cannot say, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I should not have said those things. And as a result, they make an investment in their position. Another question that I received is that, what's the driving force here? What perpetuates this? And the answer is, follow the money. There's an enormous amount of money now being made by a small group of people who are getting money off of the fines and the lawsuits and the collections and the liens and especially the foreclosures. I mentioned earlier about the notion of equity theft. One of the things that they're able to do now is they know the equity in your home. They track that. And once that's tracked and they find a home with a lot of equity, they're going after you because they want that equity. Let me use an example. Let us assume for a moment that you have a home that's worth $300,000 and you owe $300,000. You're not a likely candidate for this. What use is it to foreclose on your property? There's nothing in it. But you have a home that's worth $300,000 and you only owe $150,000, you're a target because there's now $150,000 worth of equity in your home and those people want it. Start slow, send a letter, you got a weed, you left your garage door open, you have a jar in your front window, we don't like it. Your plant, whatever it is, and you get upset. Wait a minute, this is my property. This is the way and then they send another letter and they say, we're going to fine you. And you say, I'm not going to tolerate this. And then they fine you. And then they fine you again, and you become more and more angry. And in the process of becoming angry, you become also afraid. You're afraid to go to the mailbox. What's the next letter? You're afraid of your neighbors. Who turned me in? And now the letters keep on coming. And now it makes its way to the collection company. And when that collection company finds that you've got the equity in your home, they're going to do anything they can to foreclose on it. Who gets the benefit of the foreclosure? Well, there is some information to suggest, but we cannot prove at this point, that the people internally are the ones getting equity. the management, the lawyers, the collection companies. They target it, they send someone in to bid on it, they get the property, they split the money. It's then resold, a new person moves in the neighborhood, and lo and behold, what do you think happens? The fines start again because the person who bought the home had no information that there were problems with the home. And so they get a letter saying, you're in trouble. You have a weed. And it perpetuates itself. Follow the money. The size of this cash register is almost bottomless. It's only monitored by the number of homes in homeowners associations all over the United States. Add in the mobile homes, add in the condominiums, add in the townhouses, and you have a small group of people that are generating extraordinary wealth at the hands of individuals who simply wanted to own their property. Who's running the community, the question is. This is a recent shift, a recent phenomenon. I'll introduce a concept to you called a paradigm shift. The word paradigm means model. The original model, let's live together, let's come and live in a community. We shift now, let's live in a community that's specific, and we'll call it a homeowners association, but we'll get together and we'll live together as a community. Now it shifts again. We need to oversee our neighbors, and now it shifts again, and we're going to make sure that neighbor lives the way that I want them to live. And now the board members, not all of them, but some become very, very hostile as well as excited by the power that they have. So in answer to your question is, who's running the community? Well, it used to be the boards, but here's now the new news for you, ladies and gentlemen. It's no longer the boards. The attorneys, the management companies, and the collection companies have taken over control of those boards by telling them what to do, how to do it, and the way to do it. That is to say, the board members are now nothing more than puppets, instructed on what to do and not to do. Certain and specific messages are followed. Fine, fine, fine. Punish, punish, punish. Go after them. And never, ever, ever give money back. You made a mistake, we'll cover you. We'll take care of it. You got yourself a law firm behind you. And you say, well, now wait a minute here. I'm the person who sent money in to my HOA to pay for that law firm. What you don't know is that money that you sent in that's now suing you, you have no control over, and now the big surprise, if you want to do something to stop the very lawsuit that you paid for, you're going to have to go out and hire another law firm, and you're going to pay for it twice. Who's in control? The management companies, the collection companies, the attorneys. Your boards, they're just passing people now. And they, like you, are becoming frightened at their loss of control. Very common question. What about those communities where they're towing your cars? This is part of what I would say another dubious but brilliant movement within the collection companies and management companies produce cash. Here's the way it works. We go back in time. You buy a house, there's a street, park on the street. Now time passes. You buy a house, you can't park on the street. Now time passes, and the home that you bought where you could park on the street, the attorneys and the management companies got together and said, let's pass a rule and say that where you could park on the street, now you can't park on the street. Where do you park? Well, park in your garage. But if you have 3 cars, or if you have 2 cars and it's a 1-car garage, you can't park your car. What you going to do? Well, you'll just run in the house and get what you need. But you've got tow companies going around the neighborhood stalking the cars. This is their cash flow. They have instant cash flow. They're allowed into the neighborhood. They're not stopped. They're invited in, and many of the tow companies are owned by the management companies, the collection companies, or the attorneys. You walk away from your car, you walk inside, you come outside, your car is being towed. As of just about 3 weeks prior to this presentation, a man in Florida, a doctor, had left his car sitting outside for a moment. He came outside, he attempted to stop him, and the tow driver drove away, pulling his car, drove over him, and the man died. Oh, you want to hear the interesting news? The HOA still can't decide whether they should still keep that tow company or not. They're voting on it. They're voting on it. The tow companies are now part of the process, and there are tow companies designed strictly to operate in HOAs. And while I could stand up here and tell you story after story, I'll at least relate another one to you. A community, gated, you can't park on the street. They built the garages too small, you can't park in the garage. What are the directions on what to do? Park across the street in the Vons parking lot and walk in. Stunning. Did you know this before you bought the home? Did your realtor say to you, oh, and by the way, you can't park. You may want to consider that when you buy the property. You're never told about this. And warning, at any given moment in time, rules relating to parking can change. And the best shots are those communities that are gated where you have no choice. Add to that now the kind of vehicle that can park. That is to say, let us assume you own your own business. You got a little plumbing company, you got a little computer repair company. It says it right on the side of the van. Can't park. You're not allowed in the community. They'll tow your car. I'm going to begin with an absolute apology here. It is not my intent to offend anybody, though I am sure the collection companies, the management companies, and the attorneys are offenders who are making money on this. I have yet to have anyone be bothered that is outside that group. But now I'm going to suggest something that may be happening. I do not know and have no confirmation that this is true. As the HOA boards begin to matriculate and power begins to be taken, and that power is taken over by the attorneys, the management companies, the collection companies, there could be and may be an interlinking religious agenda. it is just a little more than coincidental that the religious beliefs on the part of some people seem to be being projected into the neighborhoods in the form of being punitive, punished. Go back in time. Are you really surprised that religion brings about war? Is that its intent? No, that is not the intent of religion. It is a byproduct of what happens in time. It is highly possible that this is driven religiously, and I will not take the liberty in this lecture to suggest to you those religions that are after this. But I will tell you this. In the beginning, it is well known that these HOAs had been created in part to identify certain ethnic groups to be removed, certain religious groups to not be allowed in, and certain sexual interests to not be allowed in. And even to this day, depending on who you are and your family structure, you are not allowed in. This, of course, is a form of racism. Let's add another piece to this: politics. I believe that the HOAs now have become political groups. Not just managing, not just overseeing, but rather, are you a Democrat or a Republican? You are a Republican? You're a Democrat? Well, we don't have those on our board. And I have firsthand knowledge of these letters that have gone out, defaming other people because of their political belief system. The boards, in some cases, are being politically driven, and therefore the design of your homeowners association, although undisclosed in the CC&Rs, has built in a political agenda. I'm going to take a liberty here. When have I not taken a liberty? Another question: what are these things? How do we think of them? Well, I can tell you that as time has gone along, I no longer view them as HOAs. I view them as villages. We have village next to village, next to village, next to village, and there's a village across the city, and there's a village in another state. We have tens of thousands of villages. And these villages are then run by leaders who are overseen by leaders. By viewing them as villages, I think psychologically we can actually see it as it is. People get up in the morning, they get up, they leave the village, and they come back. But when they come back to that village, you better be prepared to live the way that the village leaders demand that you live. And if you don't, you will pay. And oh, by the way, if you want to leave, if you've had it, most of you don't know this, but you're going to pay a fee when you leave the village and sell your home. It's not free to leave. You paid to get in, and now you're going to pay to get out. And those fees are increasing and increasing and increasing. Watch what's happening. Use the word village and see if it applies. What can you do to protect yourself? I don't have all the answers, but I have a few. And so here is one. If the management company, the collection company, the attorneys want your home, One way to get your home is for you to default on your association dues. And you say, wait a minute, I always pay my dues. I'm good. And maybe you are. But here's what you don't know. You send your check in, but they don't cash it. And having not cashed it, you're now in default. And you call up and say, oh, no, I sent my check in. And they say, we never got it. Yes, I did. And you're back and forth. And so you try and pay it, but no, wait a minute now. You were late, so now you're going to be fined. And now as a result of that fine, you're angry and you get upset. And some people become so angry that that's it, I've had it, I'm not putting up with this anymore, and they got you. And you are the target for an ultimate foreclosure, because the reason they didn't cash your check is because you've got equity in your home. Okay, that's the problem. What's the solution? Number one, always send your funds in certified. Always. Number two, I'm talking about certified mail, by the way, not a certified check, certified mail. Number two, if you've sent your check in, check to see if the check has cleared. It should take no more than 3 to 5 days for a check to clear. If it hasn't, you call them and find out if they've deposited it, and you track it again. Should you have to go through this? Absolutely not. You shouldn't have to go through any of this stuff. However, if you don't take care of yourself, I can assure you, your homeowners association is not going to do it. They have no interest in desire in doing that. 3, always put in the memorandum section, paid under protest. If you've got a legal issue about the money you've paid, the courts are more likely to listen if you've indicated right out of the gate, I'm against paying this, but I had to. You've got a case. I'm not an attorney. This is not legal advice. You have a case stating that it's paid under protest. I answered a question similar to this earlier, but I want to go about it a little bit differently. And this is a concept known as smearing. Smearing, like slander, libel, and defamation, is what happens a lot in communities. Neighbor against neighbor. Person against person. And one thing that we can do is we smear each other. This is very common. We become very habituated to it on the news and on entertainment. Shows that base their entertainment on putting other people down, saying negative things about them, articles in the paper. The process of smearing is, in fact, part of slander, libel, and defamation. And I strongly recommend that you nip it in the bud. Get it in writing. Certified mail. As of the above date, this is to memorialize the following. These words were said by you in the following environment. You have 15 days to retract it and apologize. Get it in writing. Do not rely on what somebody else has to say or said they would confirm. Interestingly enough, in the discussion here today, one of the questions has come up about HUD, Housing, Urban, and Development. They are a tool that to date has been widely underused, and I can tell you that myself, I am pursuing HUD a great deal to lend a hand. Why? They are a federal agency. They are the only groups of people, the federal agencies, that can usurp homeowners associations because that's state-related government. That is, you signed a document saying that you accept the document within the state. Investigate HUD. Find out what they can do for you. Disabled, the elderly, harassment, abuse, anything where you as a homeowner are being attacked, HUD has the power to step in. Warning, they're absolutely overworked, absolutely overburdened. And the management companies, collection companies, state government, attorneys know that they're overburdened. And they're counting on the idea that HUD is not going to be able to handle all of the complaints. The ultimate potential outcome, that there'll be more funding for HUD to come in and take care of some of these problems. Is it likely? I don't know. As of this date, there has been no action on their part except in isolated cases. Someone in the audience using the word that they felt like they were going through a shakedown. And I completely agree. This is very much like a shakedown. Think of the places or times where the mobster would come through and they'd go into the candy store or the laundry, and they'd shake the owner down for 10% of their earnings. It's the shakedown. If you don't pay me, we're blowing up the joint. If you don't pay me, we're going to beat you up. We're going to get your family. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Well, times have changed. And now you have shakedowns supported by the government. They're allowed to do what they're doing. And in my opinion, these are shakedowns in no less a form. Your money is being taken from your pocket as a result of these shakedowns. A couple in the audience, with all due respect, are elderly, and they are overwhelmed, and they are ill, and they feel powerless. What I want you to know is that we have separate laws that will help the elderly. And those laws are good laws and they're important. But I would warn you, they too are an agency that's overwhelmed. And now it's a question of triage, and the word triage means the worst first. In war, if there's wounded and there's too many wounded, we're going to make a decision as to whom we think is going to make it, and the others we're going to let go. So it's not so much the worst first, but it's the one that we can do something about. And the others are going to have to go by the wayside. Taking care of the elderly has become an enormous problem because we are now matriculating into a society of the elderly. The baby boom generation has now gotten old. That generation of flower power, peace, love, has now gotten old. And the new generation wants their money. Not all the new generation, but some. And if you've got the psychopathology, you are someone who's antisocial enough to be able to steal from others, an easy target is the elderly. For those of you who are family members of the elderly, I strongly suggest that you step in and do something about it. And I'm going to say something now that you may find offensive. The elderly represent part of your future inheritance. If you don't look out for that property, it's going to be gone. Or it's going to have so many liens and fines against it that by the time it's liquidated, you will end up with nothing. Do it now. Step in now. Don't wait. Ask your elderly parents, are they okay? Many of them are embarrassed to tell you. And the older the individual, the more likely it is that those letters are coming in, but they don't know what to do with them, so they're just letting them pile up. Step in and do something about it. Get documentation. File a claim for elder abuse. Well, it's an understatement to say that I study these organizations. And one of the things that I've found is that these HOAs, those places where you lived, have a non-profit status with the IRS. That means they don't have to pay taxes. But they are for profit. Enormous profits. All of that money that's coming in is profit. And it's being siphoned off into the hands of the management companies, the collection companies, and the attorneys, who then are able to take the money as fees. So while they're for profit, your HOA is non-profit with non-profit status, and therefore gets all the advantage of it. In my opinion, one of the ways to begin to put a halt to this is for the IRS to turn HOAs into profit-making organizations, therefore paying their fair share to the Internal Revenue Service, which in turn can come back to the community in the form of services. What service? Elder abuse, legal support, legal aid. Bring the money back into the community. It's only a one-way filter right now, straight to the HOA, onto the management, collection, and attorneys. And the filter is a non-profit organization. This is, and I say it boldly, a lie. These organizations are for profit. And there are now cases coming up about it. The overall theme of many of the questions that have been asked thus far is, my health is being affected. What about my welfare? What about my safety? What about these things? And I would summarize them this way. Health, safety, and welfare is the responsibility of your state and the United States. It's also the responsibility of your homeowners association, and they are rarely, if ever, sued for this. And I can tell you personally, for myself, that this is a major area of attack that I'm using, is that the HOAs are affecting the health, safety, and welfare of its community members, and the cities and states are ignoring that health, safety, and welfare. And they're responsible, and they're liable. Will I win that case? I don't know. But I can tell you that I'm going to try. and I support you in trying to. So one of the questions is, so are things getting better? And I want to just say quite bluntly, no. No, they're not. These recordings are my attempt to do something that will cause them to get better in the future. But it is my opinion that things are getting worse, a lot worse. And I don't see them getting better anytime soon. I can also tell you that when I began this 4 years ago, I was, and I've said it in an earlier recording, I was delusional. I believed that if I got into this academically and I sent out a letter saying you're harming other people, that those people would say, oh, I didn't know that. I'll stop doing what I'm doing. But they didn't, and they don't, and they know what they're doing. And I was delusional. The fact that there is so much money involved in this is going to keep people doing this over and over and over again. I cannot encourage you enough, those of you who are listening, don't buy a home in a homeowners association. Don't do it. You think it's going to be okay, but it's not. You don't find out until it's too late. I will give you an example. One of the areas of research that I tried was going to real estate agents and tried to make offers on homes in homeowners associations where the association agreed to waive their right to liens and fines. No. No, we won't do it. And so the seller is stuck until they find a buyer who's willing to buy with it. And you as a buyer, unless you agree that this will happen to you, can't buy. Don't buy a home in a homeowners association until this has been resolved. There's a family in the audience here tonight, a couple, and they have their children with them, and they have said that they're upset, and they're bothered, and it's causing problems in the family. This is part of HOA syndrome. The stress that goes into the family, the husband, the wife, the couple, the children are now stressed out, inducing this stress into problems in the family. This is not something that's going to go away because you are aware of it, because the stress doesn't become relieved. Leaving the house in the morning and coming back and going to the mailbox and not finding a letter you think is a lucky day. But the truth is, it shouldn't be that way. This is your home. This is the place where things should be at peace. But now you are stressed at work, and you're stressed on the freeway, and you're stressed going shopping, and now you're stressed in your own home. The big surprise? The big surprise is that there isn't more violence than is going on. I've told you there have been killings. There is an increase in violence. The police are getting to the point where they don't want to have anything to do with it. There's so much of it. Families are being affected. Be aware of it. Don't buy a home in a homeowners association. That's the absolute solution. Don't put yourself in the potential problem. Stay out of the quicksand. One of the questions has been, clearly the government knows this. Why haven't they done something? And I can't prove what I'm about to say, but it's that it hasn't gotten loud enough. It hasn't become as big of a deal as it needs to be before the government, before the President of the United States gets on the phone and says, we've got ourselves a mass shooting, we need to stop this. Gun control, HOA control. How many people need to die before the government will step in? I don't know. I am shocked at the lack of awareness regarding the violence and death that has taken place. But apparently there's not enough of it. The government hasn't felt that it's important enough to do something about it. This gets coupled with the enormous profit associated with homeowners associations. Another question, are there any more solutions? Yes. Here's a solution. For a 3-year period, don't allow fines foreclosures in the neighborhood and see what happens. This cuts off the money stream to the management companies, the collection companies, the attorneys, and like all organizations that basically leech onto other people for their income, they will dry up and go away. This is the major reason why the management companies, collection companies, and attorneys are taking over the control of the HOAs because they don't want to lose the money stream. I want to remind you that the only reason that those entities exist is because your HOA has said it's okay. You want to try something difficult? Go to your HOA and ask them to put this on hold for 3 years. They won't do it because they're told not to do that. People have asked me, is there another solution? Yes, there is. This one is simple, it is quick, and it puts an end to it. Here it is. Gain the right to have your legal support paid for by your HOA. You have paid money into your HOA, and that in turn gives the HOA access to funds for legal services. Let there be reciprocity. You've got a claim, you've got an argument, let the HOA hire an attorney for you so that you're now on even ground. For that to take place, that will require the legislation to step in and pass that as a law. Will they do that? Well, why don't you check and see and find out? Sounds easy, doesn't it? Find out if your legislator will write a bill allowing for equal legal support.